I said I was going to talk about it, so let's talk about it. It's 8:05 in the morning. It is October 21st in the year of our Lord Steve the Cat 2023 here at Site B. It is a sunny Saturday morning. Steve the Cat is looking at me like, "What you doing?" And I'm very tired. So for the past 2 weeks, I'm saying, it's the end of the year, controversy, hit D&D, 2024 D&D, blah, 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 blah. I've mentioned 4E several times, and I said, you know what, we'll get back to it because it's the subject of its own blog. So here we are. Yep, we're back to it. Let's talk about 4E because it's just the little engine that just utterly failed. Where did 4th edition go wrong? Well, I think it's safe to say that from day one, all the way up to the point where they just sort of abandoned it, every single solitary choice Wizards of the Coast made with 4th edition was just stupid, just horribly, self-destructively, back-assward stupid. It's almost as if they never wanted it to succeed. From beginning to end, from the moment they announced it, to the way they handled it, to the way they just sort of let it peter out and die, every day, every installation of interaction with this title was just an utter failure. And people hate 4E. Still, till this day, in 2023, there are still people who hate 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons with a unbelievable level of inexplicable hate. And I'm not talking like, oh man, Brussels sprouts, I hate them, but I guess I'll eat them level of hate. I'm talking about I will fucking kill you level of hate. Just this vehemence, venom of hate for 4E, which at this point in time is totally pointless. I mean, I have seen at least 2 fistfights break out. And I'm talking knockdown, drag out. Police had to be called, fistfights break out over Dungeons & Dragons. And I'm aware of at least one attempted murder over 4th edition. That's how much people hated it. And why? Is the system that bad? No. The system, you just brush everything else away. The 4th edition system wasn't that bad. It actually was pretty good. Now, the way it was presented, disaster. There's just another in a long line of the disasters that was 4th edition. It's just the way they laid it out. I mean, just the way the books are laid out are just a disaster. I mean, if you've never played before and you open up 4E, you're like, I don't understand this. It's just lots of pages and it makes no sense. And what's an encounter and a daily and a thingy? And it's just, it's just unbelievably complicated. I don't get it. Why? Yeah. So yeah, it was just laid out badly, advertised badly, handled badly. The way they dealt with the game stores was awful. The way they dealt with the general public is awful. The fact that they geared it towards, yet again, a non-existent audience was also, and it was such a drastic and jarring change from what people were used to from Dungeons & Dragons. I mean, if you go from 3.5, or 2 to 3, or 3.5 to 5, or 3.5 to Pathfinder, the transition is pretty gradual. I mean, you could look at 3.5 and 2 and see stuff that, okay, I recognize that. I get that. The layout's pretty much the same. There's a few changes, but for the most part, it's what I know. Wow, $25 for the player's handbook. I get it. I understand it. I recognize it. I can understand the transition from, say, 2 to 3, or from 3 to Pathfinder, or from 3 to 5. It's similar enough. But then you look at 4, and it's such a drastic difference that it's like crashing into a wall. There's no subtle transition. It is nonsensical. Now, we have to understand that, of course, at that period of time, the target audience they were going for was not 3.5 players. It was not, the old school. It was not AD&D players. It was in their minds, the new player base was people who were coming off of Magic the Gathering, World of Warcraft, and other MMOs. And they wanted a role-playing game that could sort of emulate the mechanics of an MMO and the philosophy of an MMO. Now, obviously, of the hundreds of mistakes they made, that was one of them. There's just no way the cut and grind of a role-playing game could seamlessly transition to the way the mechanics of a video game work. It's just two different parts of the brain. It just works on two different styles of interaction with the world. There was just no way. And they were trying to go backwards. They were trying to take established video game premises and backwards them into D&D, which was completely different. And so they just threw this out in the water, no warning, and it was just a disaster. So there's two things that I say why 4E failed. And I brought this up before, and people have disagreed with me, but whatever. This is just my own opinion and what they could have done. And, it's 2023. I think after so much time, we can just, look at it and go, all right, what could have been done better? So in the words of a former YouTuber, let me have a go. So how do we, in 2000 whatever, transition from 3.5 and the OGL to a brand new system? We know we want to make a brand new system, and the system is jarringly different. And we're going for a completely different target audience. We've got this gap, okay? So we could continue working on 3.5 stuff, or we could just kind of let 3.5 stuff slow down. We know that there's third-party 3.5 stuff out there, OGL stuff out there. The 3.5 fan base is taken care of. So we want to try out this system. How do we present it in such a way? Because that's one of the many mistakes they made, is they didn't play test it. There was no court of public opinion in regards to the 4th edition system and the 4th edition layout. They just threw it out there and said, fuck you if you don't like it. But what if they'd done something different? So in my hypothetical universe, Wizards of the Coast has acquired recently, in D&D time, Eberon. And I'm using Eberon as the example because the feel of Eberon sort of goes with the feel of what they were trying to do with 4th edition. That MMO, that steampunk style, the feel of the way the world of gaming was that Wizards of the Coast saw. So they already had Eberon. They didn't have to, people have said they wouldn't have used Eberon. They would have, it's fine. Okay. They had other titles they could have used. They could have used Dragonlance. They could have used Greyhawk. They could have used Mastaka. They could have used Alternity. They could have used that weird space game they made, Dragon Space or whatever it did. They could have used one of the Magic the Gathering settings. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use Eberon for the example. You can disagree with me. So they say at the beginning of whatever year 4th edition came out, I don't remember. Hey, we want to test this new system. We're going to release the Eberon role-playing game. And the Eberon role-playing game features the mechanics that we know are in 4th edition. All right. Put it out January 1st, 2000 and whatever it was. Let's say 2002. And it's the mechanics. And they just throw it out there, separate and unique. It's not 3.5. It's not being advertised as Dungeons and Dragons. It's being advertised as the Eberon role-playing game, and it has the 4E system. So from 2000, I'm saying 2002, whatever. I don't know. My timeline's wrong, but who cares? For the sake of this hypothetical experiment. So 2000 and whatever, they put out the Eberon role-playing game using the 4th edition mechanics. They never say this is 4E D&D. They say this is Eberon. And for that year, we're testing this system. All right. They come out with the Eberon Player's Handbook, Campaign Builder Guide, whatever you want to call it, and let's say one source book. And about every 3 months, the team that is working on this and testing the waters for this, releases another Eberon product. Enough to keep people interested in this new system. And with everyone, they release a survey. And they're very much hands-on, unlike what they were in the real world. They're very much, every time they're at a convention, they're asking questions. They're making it clear that we're testing this new system, this Eberon role-playing game system. Didn't have to be Eberon. Could have been Dragonlance, Greyhawk, Mestaka, Magic the Gathering, Dragon Space, Alternity, Magitech, whatever. They had a couple other ones. Conan even. Steampunk, the role-playing game. So for that year, every 2 or 3 months, there's an expansion. They're constantly asking questions. They're constantly working on this Eberon system. While they're doing that, somewhere maybe in the background, back at Wizards of the Coast headquarters, they're also still testing the waters with the 3.5 evolution. They're watching how 3.5 is evolving in the OGL. Maybe Pathfinder has come out by then. And so they're watching how people are responding to Pathfinder and the other OGL stuff. And so a whole little separate group, his job is just to monitor what's going on with the rest of the world, while this other group is doing the steampunk Eberon role-playing game. So for a year, the 4E system has been tested as the Eberon role-playing game. At the end of the year, okay, bear with me in this thought experiment. At the end of the year, they put out a survey. We know Wizards of the Coast loves surveys, all right? And in this survey, they say, all right, you've had a year to experiment with this system. We've been out there. We've been listening to you. What do you think of the Eberon role-playing game system? Would you like to see that be the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons? So in my hypothetical timeline, now it's 2004. They've been out there for a year, and they say, what do you think? So outcome number 1, people love it. They've had a year to play with it. They've had a year to tinker with it. And they're like, I absolutely fucking love this system. All the reviews are mostly popular. I mean, we know people are still going to hate it no matter what, right? And the old school will be all uppity about it and whatever. But for the most part, the general reaction is it did its job. It appeals to the brand new market. It appeals to the established players of that time period of 2003 through 2005. And maybe there's enough old school players that are like, sure, I'll give it a try, while the rest of the old school players are like, screw you, we've got this OGL, we're just going to play with that. So then they go, great, what do you think of this being the new Dungeons and Dragons system? And people are like, yes, I absolutely love it. This is a great system. This totally emulates D&D of 2005. So that's it. Then they put out a brand new player's handbook saying, Player's Handbook, 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons, using the award-winning Eberon role-playing system. They continue to support Eberon. Maybe that's the new core campaign world. Again, Eberon is just the example. It could have been Greyhawk. I want to go on record as a 4E Essential. 4E Essential is a great game, better than 5E for a fact. Thanks for the $5, James. I have no idea where that money goes when you send me super chats, but I do appreciate the super chats. So there we go. There it is. Now it's 2005, 2006 in this hypothetical universe. 4th edition is out there. It's using the established system of the Eberon role-playing game, or whatever you want to call it, that they spent the year testing. And it goes forward. And we know there'll be controversy and whatever, and then they'll maybe do another edition later on. But for now, all that shit that happened for 4E, this experiment probably would have eliminated anywhere from 30 to 80%. I mean, there still would have been the bullshit. But I don't think the fist fights or the attempted murder would have happened. And I don't know if people would have hated it as much as they do now had they just tested it. Then there's the other possible outcome from that hypothetical universe. At the end of that year, they put out the survey. People hate it. People hate the Eberon role-playing game mechanics. And they're like, fine, we hear you. Okay, this thing, we're just going to let it peter out. Maybe we'll support it once a year. We're just going to peter out, and you'll never see it again. But meanwhile, in the background, we've been working on this other system, and here it is. What do you think of this? And that is basically D&D Next, the game we got in between 4 and 5 for the few people who remembered the D&D Next playtest. So now it's basically what we get at the end of 2005, if the survey was negative, was the beginning of what we now know as 5th edition, but it just came out much earlier. It uses a mechanic system similar enough to 3rd and similar enough to Pathfinder that people aren't totally freaked out. You can have the general transition of old players. You can still appeal to the newer audience because, again, in my hypothetical universe, they spent a year play testing this system. They spent a year getting responses. The response was either positive, we absolutely love it, and 4th edition became the system that was the basis behind D&D from 2005 going forward. Or they fucking hated it, and then they move on to D&D Next, which eventually would become what we now know as 5e. And people are like, yeah, I fucking love this. It's exactly what I want. Okay. And then, of course, a few years later, people would be like, I fucking hate 5e or 4e or whatever you're calling it or whatever. There would still be controversy. There's no way to eliminate controversy. But again, getting back to my initial premise in my hypothetical universe, 4e failed from day one to the day they just kind of abandoned it because they made every single solitary possible mistake you could make. And the main mistakes was the philosophy of the way they treated game stores, the way they treated the player base, the way they basically treated the game. I mean, it was like they wanted it to fail. It's like they wanted 4E to fail. It's like somebody said, make every worst possible stupid self-destructive mistake choice you can make regarding this product and see how well it survives. And that's what they did from day one to the end. They treated it like shit. They treated the fans like shit. It's like they wanted it to fail. And one of the main things at the end of my premise is, of the many mistakes they made, is that they didn't do a customer survey. They didn't do a soft open. They didn't do a public play test. They didn't address the Court of Appeals. At no point in time did they show anybody what 4E was going to look like. They just went, bam, here it is, completely different system. Fuck you if you don't like it. Instead of, like I said, you gradually introduce it to people over a year, and at the end of the year, you go, hey, what do you think? Do you like this? Do you not like it? So there you go. There are other reasons why 4E failed, which I have already gone over. And I've already gone into this for about 16 minutes, so I don't think we need to go any further. Wizards of the Coast dropped the ball with 4th edition. And a lot of that could have been avoided had they just taken a second to think and not treat that period of time the way they treated it. Now, we'll never know 100% why they did the things they did for 4th edition. Hell, we still don't understand half the choices they make for 5th edition. Nothing Wizards of the Coast has done since 3.5 has really made sense in regards to making a product successful. 80% of D&D's success is just because it's D&D and people don't know any better. And, it's had an advertising monstrosity pushing it forward. But Wizards of the Coast has treated it like, fuck it. I mean, people are going to buy it because they don't have a choice. We can just do whatever the fuck we want, pineapple on pizza. Which is sad because there are people who absolutely love 4E. And the 4E Essentials mechanics are great. They're great. I understood them. My dyslexic brain understood 4E math. I'm one of the few people who actually did. And if I could understand it, then there was a kernel of a good system in there. It was just presented incorrectly. All right, so that is my hypothetical universe. That is my why, what they could have done to make 4E succeed. Because I mentioned it several times this week. I brought it up. I'm sure there's people who disagree with me. Whatever. What do you think? What could Wizards of the Coast done differently way back in whenever it was, 2000 and whatever, to make 4E a success? Was there anything they could have done? Or was it just doomed to fail from the onset? Let me know what you're thinking. Thanks again for the $5, James. I always appreciate the super chats. I don't know where they go. I know the money is taken out of your account and sent somewhere, and occasionally I get it, but, I think it's like once every 6 months. I don't know how super chats work, but I appreciate it. The best way to support me, though, is to head on over to my store on Giant Slayer Games. and buy my merch. And we should have the POD copy of the latest installment of the Wretched Universe available soon. Wretched, good guys always lose. The future of the Wretched Vigilantes universe is interesting because, like, every time I finish a product and Miguel publishes it, I go, I could have done that better. I could have done that different. So I assume at some point in time I will do a Wretched Vigilante second edition. Right now it feels like once Henchman is done, that's going to be it for a while because I don't think it's selling the way they wanted it to sell. But yeah, whatever. We could go into that on a whole separate video. What do you think about my talk about 4th edition? Hopefully we don't have to bring it up again. Have a great Saturday to everybody out there, and I'll talk to you all later. Stay safe. Happy Halloween. Get off my land. 4ED.